Hey, beautiful people. Hey, y'all. Welcome back. My name is Tamika Collins, and this here is my YouTube page. I got a little ring light going on, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it be a little dark in here, so, I wanted to bring a little light to the situation. So, we got a little brightness going on. I could have cleaned my glasses before I got on, couldn't I? Sorry. I hope you're having a wonderful, fantastic, fantabulous, greater than the gooderest day, evening, nighttime. It was wonderful. I have been up since 3 o'clock, so I apologize if I'm a little kooky. But anywho, I'm kind of kooky all the time, but you know, I get a little extra whenever I'm sleepy. But all right, we are in Leviticus. Oh, I have not said this in a long time, but you can follow me on my Facebook at Tamika Collins, and you can follow me on my Instagram at Coffee Sings. That's COFEPHSINGS, and my TikTok, which is Coffee COFEPH. I also have a new page. Well, I have two little pages on, well, they're not little. I'm not going to call them little, but two pages on two groups on my Facebook. It's called Simple Eats, where I post up my food that I always be making, you know what I'm saying? Just little simple things or whatever, I like food. Who doesn't like to eat? But, and then I have a coffee break, which is COFEPH, and break, the word break, BREAK. And it's some of my artwork that I do because I love to dib dab in art. I like to color, I like to make things, I like to design things. So, follow me, follow me, follow me. All right, so we getting back to the task at hand. We are in Leviticus. We are in the 14th chapter now. Yay, we are moving, y'all. 14th chapter. And then, we recap. So in chapter 12, they was talking about the purification after childbirth. And chapter 13, they talked about how to handle whether a person or items were contaminated or persons had skin diseases. So we in Leviticus, and Leviticus is still, like I said, pretty much the laws and, helping them to mold themselves into who God wants them to be. And, you know, learning rules and regulations of how to do things. He's setting in order places, after the 10 Commandments and them leaving. You got to set some rules, some boundaries, let people know how we gonna do this thing, right? It's just like any other group. You come in, you got a head person, and they say, okay, we're gonna do this. They have an agenda. They have a specific way that they would like for things to go. Yes, they may take your suggestions, but other than that, this is the format. Correct? Correct. Alrighty then. Chapter 14. Called Cleansing from Skin Disease. And the Lord said to Moses, the following instructions are for those seeking ceremonial purification from a skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonially clean, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order that one bird be slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the live bird, the cedar stick, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop branch and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the blood of the dead bird 7 times on the person being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has purified the person, he will release the live bird in the open field to fly away. The persons being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the seventh day, they must again shave all their hair from their heads and including the hair of the beard and eyebrows. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. On the eighth day of each person, on the eighth day, each person will being purified must bring two male lambs and 1 year old female lamb, all with no defects, along with a grain offering of 6 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil and a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present that person for purification along with the offerings before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take one of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up as a special offering before the Lord. He will then slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where sin offerings and burnt offerings are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offerings belong to the priest. It is a most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the guilt offering and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to his head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest must present the sin offering to purify the person who was cursed of the skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person who was healed, and the person will be ceremonially clean. But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings may bring one male lamb for a guilt offering to be lifted up as a special offering for purification. The person must also bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil for grain offering and a cup of olive oil. The offering must also include 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of the pair must be used for the sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the eighth day of the purification ceremony, the person being purified must bring the offerings to the priest in the Lord's presence at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering along with the olive oil and lift them up as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering. He will take some of its blood and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the lobe of the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of them will be for the sin offering and the other for the burnt offering, to be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. These are the instructions for purification for those who have recovered from a serious skin disease, but who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. Verse 33, treatment of contaminated houses. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew. The owner of such house a house must then go to the priest and say, it appears that my house has some kind of mildew. Before the priest goes in to inspect the house, he must have the house emptied so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. So that nothing will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. Then the priest will go in and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds the greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall surface, the priest will step outside of the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must return to another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order stones from those areas to be removed. The contaminated material will be then taken outside of the town to the area designated as ceremonially unclean. Next, the inside walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly and the scrapings dumped into the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. But if the mildew reappears after all the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread and the walls are clearly contaminated with a serious mildew and the house is defiled, it must be torn down and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of town to the place designated for a ceremony unclean. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonially unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will then take the cedar stick, the hyssop branch, and the scarlet yarn and the live bird and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird and into the fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions of dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores and mildew, whether on the clothing or in a house, and a swelling on the skin, a rash, or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonially clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding skin diseases and mildew. Where we at? Let's see if we can do 15. We can do 15, can't we? Because I know it was the blood. I know it was the blood. I know it was the blood for me. One day when I was lost, Jesus died on the cross. And I know it was the blood for me. Holy. Okay. Chapter 15. Bodily discharges. The Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Any man who has a bodily discharge is ceremonially unclean. This defilement is caused by his discharge, whether the discharge continues or stops. In either case, the man is unclean. Any bed on which the man with the discharge lies, and anything on which he sits will be ceremonially unclean. So if you touch the man's bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you sit where the man with the discharge has sat, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch the man with the discharge, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man spits on you, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any saddle blanket on which the man rides will be ceremonially unclean. If you touch anything that was under the man, you will be unclean until evening. You must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man touches you without first rinsing his hands, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot the man touches must be broken, and any wooden utensil he touches must be rinsed with water. When the man with the discharge is healed, he must count off 7 days for the period of purification. Then he must wash his clothes and bathe himself in fresh water, and he will be ceremonially clean. On the eighth day, he must go get 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons and come before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle and give his offerings to the priest. The priest will offer one bird for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the man before the Lord for his discharge. Whenever a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his entire body in water, and he will remain ceremonially unclean until the next evening. Any clothing or leather with semen on it must be washed in water, and it will remain unclean until evening. After a man and a woman have sexual intercourse, they must bathe in water, and they will remain unclean until the next evening. Whenever a woman has a menstrual period, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. However, anyone who touches her during the time will be unclean until evening. Anything on which the woman lies or sits down during the time of her period will be unclean. If any of you touch her bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch any object she has sat on, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. This includes her bed or any object she has sat on. You will be unclean until evening if you touch it. If a man has sexual intercourse with her and her blood touches him, her menstrual impurity will be transmitted to him. He will remain unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies will be unclean. If a woman has a flow of blood for many days that is unrelated to her menstrual period, or if the blood continues beyond the normal period, she is ceremonially unclean. As during her menstrual period, the woman will be unclean as long as the discharge continues. Any bed she lies on and any object she sits on during that time will be unclean, just as during her normal menstrual period. If any of you touch these things, you will be ceremonially unclean. You must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. When the woman's bleeding stops, she must count off 7 days, then she will be ceremonially clean. On the eighth day, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and present them to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Through this process, the priest will purify her before the Lord for the ceremonial impurity caused by her bleeding. This is how you will guard the people of Israel with ceremonial uncleanness. Otherwise, they would die, for their impurity would defile my tabernacle that stands among them. These are the instructions for dealing with anyone who has a bloody discharge, a man who is unclean because of emission of semen, or a woman during her menstrual period. It applies to any man or woman who has a bodily discharge and to the man who has sexual intercourse with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. Clean yourself, people. Clean. He wants you clean and washed in the blood of the Lamb. Thank you for the blood of the Lamb, Jesus. Anywho, I'm going to sign off right there. I hope you have had a wonderful time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And I hope that hour falling back doesn't bother anybody too much. But, you know, we are in the fall season. Yay. All right. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much. I'm going to eat.